Two people walk into the same brokerage on the same Tuesday in January. Same age, 25. Same city, same salary. They both open an investment account, pick the same index fund, and set up the same automatic deposit, $300 a month. Same platform, same return rate, same everything. 33 years later, one of them has $1,100,000. The other has $520,000. That's a $580,000 gap between two people who started at the exact same place on the exact same day with the exact same $300 a month. And the person who ended up with $500,000 less didn't gamble their money, didn't invest in some scam, didn't blow their savings on a boat. They did three small, completely normal, completely human things that almost every investor does at some point. Today, I'm going to show you what those three things were, why they cost $580,000, and how a single rule, 4 numbers, would have prevented all of it. My name is Andy, and I spend a genuinely embarrassing number of hours staring at compound interest tables so you don't have to. This is Andy Explains Money. Now, if you've been investing for a year or two and you've ever opened your brokerage app, looked at the balance, and thought, this is basically what I put in. Is this thing even working? I need you to hear something. That thought is not a sign that you're doing it wrong. That thought is the most predictable, most universal, most dangerous moment in the entire investing timeline. And it has a name. It's called the silent phase. And the silent phase has killed more retirement accounts than any market crash in history. Not because the math stopped working, because the math doesn't feel like it's working. And feelings, when it comes to money, are extraordinarily expensive. Here's the number that changed how I think about all of this. The first 10 years of compounding generate less than 4% of your total 40-year wealth. The last 10 years generate over 60%. Read that again. 4% in the first decade, 60% in the last. That is not a motivational quote for your vision board. That is a mathematical fact about how exponential growth distributes over time. And it means that the people who quit investing in year 7, the people who looked at a modest balance and decided it wasn't working, were walking away from a machine that was 11 years from doing the thing they opened the account to watch it do. Let me show you the map. Because the problem isn't that people are lazy or stupid or bad with money. The problem is that everybody shows you the destination, the $1,000,000 portfolio, the early retirement, the beach, without ever showing you what the road is supposed to look like on the way there. And the road looks boring, suspiciously boring, boring enough to make smart people quit. Take $10,000, park it in a broad market index fund earning 10% per year, the historical average of the S&P 500, not a guarantee, a historical average. Then watch. After 10 years, you have $25,000. Fine, not exciting. You waited a decade and your money didn't even triple. After 20 years, $67,000. Better, starting to feel real. After 30 years, $174,000. Now we're talking. After 40 years, $452,000. Now look at that last step. The jump from year 30 to year 40, that single decade, adds $278,000. More than the entire first 30 years combined. One decade produced more wealth than 3 decades. The curve didn't change. Your patience was rewarded. Except most people weren't patient, because nobody told them the first 30 years were supposed to feel slow. Warren Buffett is worth over $100 billion. People talk about his genius, his stock picking, his legendary annual letters. But look at his actual timeline. At age 50, his net worth was roughly $300 million. Already extraordinary by any standard. But 99% of his wealth was built after his 50th birthday. The most successful investor in history didn't get rich from being smart. He got rich from being old. He stayed on the curve long enough for the curve to do its job. The back half of the curve built Warren Buffett, and the back half of the curve is available to anyone who doesn't step off it first. Which brings us to the rule. 4 numbers. 7, 5, 3, 1. Each one represents a different piece of the compounding puzzle, and more importantly, each one maps to a specific emotional experience that every investor goes through. The numbers tell you what's happening. The emotions are what make you do something stupid. Understanding both is how you end up on the right side of that $580,000 gap. Let's start with the 7. At a 10% average annual return, your money doubles approximately every 7 years. This isn't a rough estimate. It's the rule of 72. Divide 72 by your return rate, and you get the doubling time. At 10%, that's 7.2 years. Think of it like a copy machine. Every 7 years, the machine makes a copy of everything you've accumulated.
The copies don't know you're stressed about rent. They don't care that the market dropped 4% last Tuesday. They don't check your portfolio anxiety level. They just copy. $300 becomes $600. $600 becomes $1,200. $1,200 becomes $2,400. You didn't earn those last $1,200. The machine did. But here's the part that matters more than the math. Here's what 7 years feels like from the inside. For most of the first cycle, it feels like nothing is happening. You contribute $300, you check the app. The number moved $47. You contributed $300 and the market gave you $47. You close the app and wonder if you'd be better off in a high-yield savings account, or real estate, or crypto, or literally anything that gives you a signal, any signal, that something is happening with your money. Behavioral economists have a name for what makes this feeling so unbearable. It's called present bias. Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize demonstrating that the human brain is not wired to process exponential growth. It's wired to process this week, this month, this number on this screen right now, which means the silent phase, the period where compounding is loading but hasn't visibly accelerated yet, feels like failure. Even when, by every mathematical measure, everything is going exactly as planned. The silent phase is not the problem. Quitting during the silent phase is the problem. And that brings us to the 5. The 5 represents 5 years, the approximate length of the silent phase, and the window where the overwhelming majority of investors make the mistakes that define their financial futures. During years 1 through 5, your portfolio feels flat. Your contributions dominate your returns. You look at the account and it seems like the market isn't doing anything for you. But what's actually happening is this. The curve is loading. Compounding is a function that starts slow and accelerates. The early flatness isn't a bug. It's how the math works. Year 5 doesn't look like the hockey stick on the spreadsheet because you're standing at the bottom of the stick, looking up, and from down there, it just looks like a wall. If you can survive 5 years without touching the account, without pausing contributions, without switching strategies because a coworker told you about some fund that returned 40% last quarter, if you can just stay, you are statistically positioned for the acceleration phase. The curve bends after you've loaded it with enough time and enough capital for the doubling machine to produce meaningful copies. 5 years isn't a long time in the context of a 40-year investing horizon, but it feels like an eternity when you're inside it. And that's the trap. The time horizon that matters is decades. The time horizon your brain operates on is days. Now the 3. This is where the psychology gets dangerous. There are 3 emotional checkpoints that every single investor hits. Not some investors. Every investor. The ones who built generational wealth named these checkpoints before they arrived. The ones who didn't reacted to them. Checkpoint 1. Doubt. It lives in years 1 through 3. You open your brokerage app on a random Tuesday. The balance is $42 higher than last month. You contributed $300. The math feels wrong. You close the app. You open a Reddit thread about investing. You wonder if you picked the wrong fund, the wrong brokerage, the wrong strategy entirely. You don't need to change anything. You're in the loading screen. Early is not wrong. Checkpoint 2. Frustration. This one shows up around years 4 through 7. By now, you understand compounding intellectually. You've built the spreadsheet. You've watched the videos. You know the hockey stick exists. But your actual portfolio doesn't look like a hockey stick. It looks like a modest hill. The gap between what you know mathematically and what you feel emotionally becomes genuinely uncomfortable.
This discomfort is not evidence that the strategy is failing. It's evidence that the curve is about to bend. Frustration in year 5 is not a signal to change. It's a signal that you're approximately 11 years away from the accelerator phase. Checkpoint 3. Panic. This one doesn't announce itself on a schedule. It arrives during a market crash, and there will be a market crash. Your portfolio drops 15%, then 20%, then 30%. In a matter of weeks, the balance you spent years building falls below what you originally put in. Every instinct in your body screams the same thing. Protect what's left. Get out. Wait for stability. Kahneman's research on loss aversion showed that losses feel approximately twice as painful as equivalent gains feel rewarding. A 20% drop hurts like a 40% gain would feel good. Your nervous system isn't broken. It's just running on a 1-week clock when the framework you're inside is built for 30 years. Here's what panic costs in real numbers. Delbar's 2023 Quantitative Analysis of Investor Behavior found that the average equity investor earned 6.81% over 20 years, while the S&P 500 returned 9.65% over the same period. That 2.84% gap, which sounds almost trivial, compounds over 30 years into a difference of more than $140,000 for the average investor. That gap didn't come from picking bad stocks. It came from reacting to the 3 emotional checkpoints instead of naming them in advance and letting them pass. The 2008 financial crisis felt like the end. The market fully recovered by 2012. 4 years. The investors who stayed made every dollar back and then kept accumulating. The investors who pulled out crystallized their losses and spent years trying to figure out when it was safe to get back in. By the time they felt safe, the recovery was already priced in. This is not a footnote. This is the entire game. And now, the one. The smallest number in the rule, and, over a lifetime, the most powerful. Every year, once a year, increase your monthly contribution by 1% of what you're currently contributing. That's it. If you're putting in $300 a month in year 1, you contribute $303 in year 2, $306 in year 3, $3. Your grocery bill fluctuates more than that on a random Tuesday. But here's what that $3 does over 30 years. That single recurring behavior, an extra $3 a month, compounding annually, adds approximately $180,000 to your outcome compared to someone who kept contributing the same flat amount forever. $180,000 from the cost of one streaming subscription added per year. Vanguard's research has consistently identified automatic contribution escalation as one of the highest impact long-term wealth-building behaviors available to everyday investors. Not stock selection, not market timing, not finding the next Tesla. Escalation and automation. And here's the part nobody talks about. The version of you that has to actively decide to increase contributions every January will sometimes forget, sometimes rationalize skipping a year, sometimes push it to March, then April, then never. The version of you that automated the 1% annual increase on day 1 never has to decide again. The automation is the discipline. You're letting the machine be consistent so you don't have to be. That's not cheating. That's engineering your own success around the fact that you're a human being with a human brain that was never designed for this. Now, let's go back to the 2 people I told you about at the beginning, because you need to see how these numbers play out in real life. Marcus and Claire, both 25, both starting with $300 a month in a broad index fund, averaging 10% annual returns. Identical starting conditions, 0 difference. Marcus learns the 7-5-3-1 rule in his first year. He names the 3 emotional checkpoints before they arrive. He writes them down on a sticky note and puts it on his monitor. He automates the 1% annual increase. In year 4, the market drops hard. He does not log in. He does not check his balance. He does not feel good about this. He stays anyway. Claire is not reckless. She is not irresponsible. She is completely, entirely, statistically normal. In year 3, the market drops sharply. She watches her balance fall below what she put in. The loss aversion kicks in exactly the way Kahneman predicted it would. She pulls everything out and waits 18 months for stability, for a signal that it's safe. When she gets back in, the market has already recovered. She missed the bounce. She resumes contributions at $300 a month, flat, no annual increase, and keeps it there for the next 30 years. 10 years in, Marcus has $61,000. Claire has $44,000. The gap is $17,000. Noticeable, but easy to rationalize. Easy to tell yourself you'll make it up later. 20 years in, Marcus has $220,000. Claire has $137,000. The gap is $83,000. Harder to ignore, but still abstract, still a number on a screen. 33 years in, Marcus has $1,100,000. Claire has $520,000. The gap is $580,000. Not because Claire was bad with money, not because she made some catastrophic mistake, because she did 3 perfectly normal, perfectly human things. She reacted to a crash, she missed the recovery, and she never automated a $3 annual increase. 3 small decisions, $580,000. At 58, Marcus receives a project offer from his employer, demanding work. 60-hour weeks, 6 months, good pay. He declines, politely, calmly, without anxiety. He doesn't need it. At 58, Claire calls her daughter on a Sunday evening. She tells her she's going to need 3 more years, maybe 61, maybe 62. She's not sure. The money gap became a freedom gap, and the freedom gap is the thing that actually matters. The $580,000 isn't really about dollars. It's about the ability to say no when the work stops being worth it. It's about the difference between retiring when you choose and retiring when the math allows it.
That gap is measured in years of your life, not digits in an account.
Warren Buffett once said the stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. He wasn't describing an investment strategy. He was describing a survival filter. The market doesn't reward intelligence. It rewards endurance. It rewards the people who refused to react to the 3 checkpoints and let the doubling machine run long enough to do what doubling machines do. Here's what the financial industry will never lead with because it's terrible for business. The 7531 rule requires no financial advisor. No actively managed fund skimming 2% per year off your compounding. No complex product. No premium subscription. No leather chair consultation. It requires a broad index fund, an automated contribution, a 1% annual increase, and the willingness to do functionally nothing for a very long time. That combination, in one sentence, is a terrible business model. Complexity sells products. Simplicity is free. What you just got was the free version. The question is whether you use it. So here's what to do. Not someday, today. First, set your 7-year floor. Decide right now that you will not evaluate whether this strategy is working until you've been invested for 7 full years. Write it down. Put it where you'll see it. This isn't patience as a personality trait. This is a pre-commitment to the math. You're not hoping the curve will bend. You're acknowledging that it can't bend until enough time has passed. The 7-year floor protects you from your own brain during the window where your brain is most likely to sabotage you. Second, survive the silent phase. If you're in years 1 through 5 right now, your only job is to not quit. Not to optimize. Not to switch funds because someone on Twitter posted a screenshot of their returns. Not to wait for a better entry point. There is no better entry point than the one where you're already in. Stay in the room. Third, name your 3 emotional checkpoints before they arrive. Write them down. Doubt, frustration, panic. Next to each one, write what you'll do when it shows up. And what you'll do is nothing. That's not passivity. Pre-committing to a non-response during a market crash is one of the most consequential financial decisions you can make. Make it now, in calm water, not in the middle of a storm when your hands are shaking and your portfolio is red. Fourth, automate the 1% annual increase today, not tomorrow, today. Set a recurring calendar reminder for January 1st of every year. Increase your monthly contribution by 1% of your current amount. If that's $3, it's $3. Let the machine handle the discipline so your future self never has to make the decision. You don't need to be a genius. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need a complex strategy or an advisor with framed credentials on the wall. You need 4 numbers, a 30-minute setup, and the willingness to be so boring about this that it stops feeling like a decision at all. The people who built wealth weren't the ones checking the market every morning. They were the ones who set it up, left the room, and let the 7-5-3-1 rule do its work while they went and lived their lives. Here's your one action before you close this video. Open your investment account. Find the contribution setting. Add $3. That's the 1%. Do it right now, not later. Later is where good intentions go to quietly die. If you did it, drop a "done" in the comments. I read them. Subscribe to Andy Explains Money if you want the next map. I'll see you there.